welcome to another episode of International Immersion. If you guys haven't seen our recent episodes, you know that we used to be called International Insights. In order to brand ourselves into a more specific, unique name, we've decided to change the name from Insights into Immersion, because we're immersing ourselves into this great culture of planet Earth. As always, we are here, me, Herman Rivera, as your guest, and
Sean Severson.
Scarlett.
And Scarlett. Scarlett. Scarlett is joining us for the first time. Hopefully we don't scare her off too much.
I'm sure we won't. At least I hope so.
So, today's topic is college life. We have two parties here that have been able to experience college life not only in their home country but in a foreign country, which is night and day possibly.
Yeah, very, very much so. And if you've listened to our previous episodes, you have noticed we did one about studying in China. And today's podcast will overlap with that to an extent, but because we have our guest here, we can actually get a good take from both ends and experiencing basically an opposite perspective. An American going to China and then a person from China coming to America for college purposes. So we thought it'd be a great way to get both points of view and share what are the similarities and what are the differences, and really kind of highlight for everyone what we've experienced, what are some general experiences, and then maybe give you an idea of what you can expect or what you maybe expect now, but it may not be the case.
Yeah. So, as any college student that travels to university, right, out of state and maybe even in state, the number one thing of that college experience is gonna be your housing, whether if it's internal school housing or maybe renting an apartment outside of the school. You know, I personally never got that chance. I always lived at home, so I was.
Nothing wrong with that. You save a lot of money, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, save a lot of money.
I'm living off campus right now because college dormitory can be really expensive.
Yeah, no. Plus, like, don't they put like living restrictions upon you? No.
I think it depends upon the college, and I know there are differences between if you like live in a on campus residence hall, or standard dormitory, or if you have more of an apartment, like on campus apartment. Of course, I think the residence halls will naturally be more restrictive than an apartment living.
Yeah, I just used to remember like people saying that they always had to like check in like after a certain time.
I know that so having experienced some dorms, you have to check in or you have to scan your school ID card to get in for some, but it really can vary based on the school.
So, and I mean that was always like a big living in dorms in a foreign, I guess here and versus a foreign country, what are kind of your guys' like views on it?
Where did you live growing? Where you were in China?
So just kind of long story short, when I did my undergrad in the U.S., I lived at home because my college was close to me, so I didn't think it was worth it to spend the extra money to live on campus when I could drive to campus in literally 10, 15 minutes. But when I went and did my master's in China, I actually did live in a residence hall, and that was the first time actually I lived in an on-campus living arrangement, and it was so I can't really say exactly what it's like to live in a U.S. dorm because I never did, but I had friends who did and I've been to them, so I can give some point of comparison. But I would say that the dorms that we lived in China at my university, they were specifically designed for international students, and they had more of an international standard. Because when I discovered what the standard Chinese dorms were like, they were pretty different. Maybe not quite night and day, but not too far off of it.
Yeah, didn't you say that they were more compact?
Yes, much more compact. At minimum, 4 people to a room. And what I remember very fondly was that what they would have is they would have a desk, and above the desk was an attached bed. and there would be 4, 2 on each side.
That's very typical in China. This is a typical Chinese dormitory.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I would visit my friend in his dorm, and I remember I'd come in and he'd have his other 3 roommates doing their stuff, and we'd be chatting, and it was much more condensed.
Yeah.
There was no personal room. And what also really kind of threw me back was when I looked at the actual beds, they were just wood planking with a sheet. There were no mattresses on them. And I'm like, what? Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of interesting. Now, maybe that was just that dorm or some others, but it was definitely different because just opposed to me and my roommate's dorm, we had, it was generally more space, 2 standard beds with, box spring and a mattress, sheets.
You have mattress?
Yeah, we had full mattresses.
You have mattress provided?
Yes. Everything was provided.
That's not the case for Chinese students. I think
saw.
Students can always bring your own mattress, but they don't give you anything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at first, yeah, like I said, when I first arrived, I thought, oh, this isn't too bad. But once I saw their dorms, I'm like, oh my God, I am so thankful for what I have now. But, it's bad, but it really makes you appreciate just kind of those basic amenities that, you have here in the States. And not to say that I don't have them in China, but I did see that at the university level. It's much more...
Oh, they're being too nice. International students.
Yeah, so that was... but no, that was just my general experience, is that they were very comfortable. They weren't... Nothing fancy, but very comfortable, and you could easily, use it as a living space and not really suffer in any way.
Oh, nice. Like, what did you ever have any noisy neighbors? Like how?
Yes, unfortunately we did, because the international dorm we had students from so many different countries, and it was like a resort sized building, like the one you see down in Florida or at a vacation spot. There were like a lot of students, 80 plus students per floor, and it was like 13 stories, so it's very big. Yeah. So we had students from all over the world, and we had a lot of Korean students in kind of living close to us, and they would party all the time. And me and my roommate really got fed up with it, and because they keep partying 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and we really got sick of it after a while. And nothing bad against them in general, it's just they tended to be the biggest partiers in the dorm, and so that was kind of annoying. It wasn't all the time, but
that's why you mess with them when they're crash. You just turn up your speakers, man, and just all.
Well, actually, my roommate, he bought a piano. And one day, I came back to the dorm, and he's like, "Hey, Sean, guess what?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, all those Koreans that they've been causing all the craziness in the dorm. He's like, "Guess what theme I learned?" He starts playing. It's the Halloween movie theme on his piano. He's like, "So we'll do this at night, and we'll scare the crap out of it." I'm like, "Oh, I like the idea, but I don't want to get kicked out of the dorm for scaring everyone half to death." But that's just one funny example, but. Other than that, they were very good, and many of my classmates actually lived just down the hall, so we could get together to study and many other things. So, but definitely different as opposed to living at home or the dorms in the U.S. where they're much more standard. 2 people to a room, maybe 3 max, at least from my example. So, Scarlett, kind of just opposed to what I'm saying, how would you describe your college experience living on campus?
I remember my college dorm. I took my undergrad in Shanghai. Yes, and that was my dormitory was pretty good. Was really good enough at that time. And there were 6 of us living in 2 rooms.
So was it 3 people to a room?
4 people in one room and the other 2 living in another room. And we have two bathrooms. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the best in that building at that time. Yeah, and not very expensive. I cannot remember anything different from your typical dormitory, but it's still very crowded. It's only a place for you to go to sleep, and it's not a best place for you to study or hang out.
Yeah, that definitely was kind of the difference that I saw as well. It's like my Chinese friends, they could study in there. They had their desks, but it was still very cramped. Whereas our desks were actually on the wall in front of our bed, and we had much more space just to go there and do work. And you still have your roommate. He's next to you, but you have your bubble a bit. You can set your desk up, you can do stuff, and you're not so kind of crunched together.
So, like, what would you say the ratio of like you being actually in your dorm room versus like being out somewhere else? Like I think like dorm rooms, like especially with the size dimensions that you guys kind of saying, like I wouldn't even want to be there more than like 4 hours.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
you can make it comfortable for yourself. You can bring your own mattress and keep warm. In Shanghai, it is cold in winter. I'm from the northern part of China. The temperatures can be really. It's killing me in Shanghai in winter. So I brought like mattress and electronic mattress that can heat.
Electric.
But that is not allowed back then because they have like control of equipment that you bring.
Oh, wow. Let me guess, they probably were worried about fire hazard.
Yes.
Yeah. We had that same issue. There, like, students couldn't buy, like, burn plates or other types of things and bring them in, even though they did. Yeah. It was for fire hazard.
Yeah, I had a blanket, but I always have to hide it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so bad with us. I mean, our dorm, there were so many things that people shouldn't have had that they had, but I think that, like, the security guards that were always down in the lobby, they never really cared too much. I mean, I can't really say why.
No, they literally will just walk into the dorm and check.
Are you serious?
Yes,
what?
But they did not do that to you.
No.
Because you're from a foreign country.
Now I will say one time
they did that
when they had the G20 in Hangzhou in 2016. The police came and they went to all the dorms and checked everything, and that was the only time.
No, police won't come. It's just the security is in this campus. It works in the dorm. They will check. They will come in. They have keys to your room. They come in and
that's a little scary.
They check it every day. So I have to hide everything. My roommates had a little pot, which is not allowed. That's why there's pot to make some instant noodles or hot pot. You can make hot pot, but we always did that at night or when we know that there are no people around.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck that happening in the U.S. I mean, people complain like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I would understand like maybe like a monthly type of thing, but like every day that seems like excessive. Yeah,
quite excessive.
That was like 10 years ago. I don't know what they did. I don't know what they do now, but yeah.
Yeah, and I can't completely kind of give you an equivalent because I never actually stayed in the Chinese dorms. I've been over there with my friends and stuff, but never stayed and never witnessed any of that in person. But I would say that the Chinese dorms, they would cut the power between 11 and midnight.
What?
They didn't do that to you?
No, they didn't. No. They didn't do that to us in our dorm. So literally after like 11 or 12,
after
like it was lights out.
You're supposed to go to bed.
Yeah. Well, so
you don't have electricity.
That's impossible. We in engineering got most of our work done at midnight.
Well, Alex, I know, but I mean, the Chinese dorms, they would cut the power at around 11 or 12.
I remember that when I was like first and second years in college, I lived in a dorm like that. But after in the third year of college, I moved to a different dorm. It's a building outside the campus, so we have electricity and hot water 24 hours.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was quite surprising, but they didn't do that with us. Now, so naturally, given there's so many international students, there were a lot of parties. Nothing really crazy like some of the things you think of it like at my college in the U.S., but there were still some pretty fun parties I went to, and they even had like all the Thai students organized like their annual water festival they in Thailand.
Oh, they did.
They got like I think 400 or 500 of international students and Chinese students together, and they all had a big water fight in the courtyard. It was a lot of fun, and the Chinese staff and security were like, "God help us." It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I would say it was much more carefree. But my last year there, they started to get clamping down more. Like when I first started, you didn't have to check in when you got in. When I left, they actually installed things where you had to scan your card and let you in. So they did clamp down more and more.
But that's still within reason. That's not like body cavity searching.
Exactly. Yeah. So definitely some similarities, but also some large disparities from kind of comparing dormitories.
So as you guys were partying it up in dorm land, you know, the other 50% of your life is classes, right? Your actual job as a student, their 40 hours.
Yeah, and I think that when we move from, you know, going into classes now, there's going to be, of course, a lot of similarities. And, you know, you go to any college, you go to class. But how the classes are set up, how they're organized, and how your professors actually, you know, instruct the material can vary. And I would say, kind of starting us off, my undergrad in the U.S. versus my grad in China were not all that different. Although I did notice that among the Chinese professors I had in particular, they're much more lecture focused and not so much discussion focused. Whereas my American professors both were much more mixed. So, and because my professors when I was in China were from China, Japan, and the U.S., you could see kind of this difference.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So I got a lot out of my classes, but I would say in some courses they could have done more critical thinking and analysis, but at the same time they maybe actually covered more material, generally speaking, versus than classes here.
No, I get that though, because like I had one Japanese professor who was very much like, here's today's outline, and we're gonna cover and then that was pretty much it. Like if we had time, like we could make discussion like at the end of it, but it was pretty much procedural in and out type of thing.
Very very mechanical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still getting used to American classroom because I'm having my graduate program here, and there's a specific program. It's like a cultural study, and there's a lot of discussion. And students are so outspoken. Yeah.
Yes, I would say that, and that's a great point.
What do you really learn from all these discussions? I'm still figuring out.
Yeah, because I would say that, you know, the Chinese students we had and the other international students, generally speaking, were much more outspoken, and we would be much go into debates and discussions much more in depth. And the Chinese students, they would never really, I wouldn't say contradict, but they would never really kind of maybe voice their own opinion or their own ideas as much. And I remember there were classes where our professor, one course in particular, we had a big 30-minute discussion about global political economy. And the last 5 minutes, he finally said, "Okay, do any of the Chinese students want to involve themselves now?" And they didn't. And I could tell he was really like, "Hey, come on, we get the discussion. You know, international students are doing. Come on, we want your take too." Because the chair of our program, he'd been educated in both countries, so he was kind of he had more of a hybrid approach, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
But yeah, that was definitely a big thing, and I think that discussion allows you not just to learn it, but learn how to implement it.
Exactly.
Which I think is a big difference between the two systems. There's a lot of memorization and just ingesting of knowledge in Chinese courses in China, whereas the U.S. is kind of more both.
Yeah.
I think it's I understand this situation in a different way because Chinese students are trained very differently. Before they go to college, they were like under very strict training. Because they always want to be right, they always want to be correct. So while Chinese students are sitting in the classroom, they're trying to figure out what the professor is intended to do. They're trying to do the right thing. So sometimes they keep very reserved about their own opinion. It's not that they don't have opinions; they want to speak the right thing. And they want to speak what the professor want them to know. So it's more like that. So I think. Because Chinese students are so used to taking tests and doing exams, and so
they're much more regimented.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a great point you bring up. Is I think that American students are almost taught to kind of question, not necessarily go against the professor, but really critique the professor and pick their brains. Whereas the Chinese students are much more just, I'm going to listen and do my thing. So I do think that, you know, your example coming here, it's a little shocking for you. People are, because I've been in classes where students openly go against the professor very, very directly, not in a mean way, but very, very bluntly, and they can get in some really intense discussion, and it really shows who knows their argument or their point or their information.
Have you guys ever had a philosophy or ethics class in your studies? Like in China or here?
I mean, I had logical reasoning as an undergrad here in the U.S., and but I didn't have any equivalent in China. The closest thing I had was like an independent study course that was required for my degree, and it was actually interesting because I took American culture and like American culture from the Chinese perspective, and that was like, wow, you know, a lot of things I was like, yeah, that's true, and other times I'm like, professor, no, we don't do that. That's not correct at all. But it was interesting seeing it. Looking at your own culture from another country's perspective, that was very intriguing.
So interesting. I always want to know. I would always want to know the American perspective about China, because I see a lot of. I can see that China's always on the news, on TV, right?
Especially recently.
Yeah. but yeah, I want to know what like ordinary people think about China. So it's really funny to hear what people say about China, and sometimes they don't really have the correct concept of it.
And that's understandable because what you know of a country is what you're exposed to it.
Yes.
And you know, if what you do and who you hang out with have nothing to do with that country, you know, it's not necessarily good, but it's understandable.
Yeah. One needs to be put themselves in other people's shoes,
exactly,
in order to kind of fully understand. And I know, especially in a place like the U.S., in which freedoms are abound by so much, like it's kind of hard to like empathize.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of international students, if they go to China, I think that sometimes if they're in a position where they have to kind of abide more in the way Chinese students are expected, it's more difficult for them because it's like, no, I'm not going to do this. No, I'm not going to.
I'm taking like cultural study, as I mentioned. It's a course. Students can just say anything they want to say, and I always hear that you guys make really harsh criticism on yourself, on the American system, on the you're just that was harsh. It feels I don't feel like comfortable talking about as an outsider. I don't want to talk about a lot about American issues.
But I'm sure you're learning a huge amount of things.
I mean, they're talking about hottest issues. They're talking about presidents. Yeah.
I mean,
and you make criticism on your own.
I think one thing Americans have, and I think it a lot of times it goes a little far, but I think one thing that we do value is objective criticism.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really important for anyone or anything because, you know, you criticize it, but you don't criticize it just for the sake of criticizing it. You criticize it to improve it, to show what's wrong and make it better. So, and I think Americans are very keen on that, but the problem is they can take it to the extreme at times.
Yeah. But I mean, I think up to a certain point, it's even better to have like an external party such as yourself, like in these type of conversations, because it's like trying to solve a problem and you've been stuck on it for hours and you don't take a break and take a step back. Yeah. So like it's getting that different point of view.
Exactly. That like, you know, we started you being in this cultural class and me being in that American culture class. You're kind of the person that's not involved with it. You come in fresh and you can inject ideas that they may not think about. And it may really actually influence things like, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way. Because in that class, a lot of times they're like, oh, yeah, we never were thinking about it in this way. But you can introduce that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great American theory, man. It's like bringing every culture into one single pot and try to solve. That's why companies hire engineers from multiple facets. Yes. Just because I have a way of solving it, you have a way of solving it, and maybe we can find
multicultural workforce.
Exactly.
At the best.
That's the main reason that this stuff is very important, right? It's like having everybody's point of view to come up with the best solution.
Exactly. Yes, that's a little about that. And now let's go ahead and move on to food. So now this, of course, is going to be quite different, as you know, Scarlett.
Favorite part.
Yeah, good old food. Oh, now, you know, we can always say that college, you're gonna have you know, cafeteria, you're gonna have dining facilities, and there's gonna be food around campus or in campus that are third-party providers.
Chick-fil-A destroyed me as a student. Oh my god, I couldn't stop eating there.
What do you want to talk about? All cafeterias on campus are bad. I've been to 2 colleges in the United States. I haven't seen anything that is good enough.
Well, yeah, I will definitely agree. It's not the best, but I have seen worse.
I mean, that was about the most edible thing. I mean, you could say like there was a Pizza Hut, and I think at one point there was a Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Now there's something else, right?
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
So very unhealthy options, like.
But there were healthy options too. But
yeah, that's true.
I would just say that in a lot of colleges the selection is rather limited. You know, they may have a mix. They may have more vegetarian. They may have more meat lovers. You know, but generally speaking, I think a lot of colleges they don't have a huge variety. It's just it's quite repetitive. Not a bad thing. It's just it really depends on the size of the school and the population there. So, and I would say that I'll go ahead and start it off with kind of comparing my undergrad college here in the States versus my college in China. My undergrad, it was kind of like what we just said. It's more limited. It was good, but relatively limited. Whereas the one in China, it was also very different, but they had four cafeterias in the same building. They had like one like halal for more like for people who more for Muslims or people from Central Asia, more halal style. And the other three, one was more specialty Chinese, and the other two were like basic Chinese food. Very very different from the food I had in the U.S. Night and day. Again, I can't emphasize that more.
Was it better over there, or?
That's really difficult to explain because the food here that I'm quite used to, the stuff in China, it was like this ain't Chinese food that I'm familiar with in the U.S. It's not in a totally different category.
That was different. I think because you went to a pretty big university.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, in different universities, I don't think they have many cafeterias or restaurants. Sometimes they don't really separate the kinds or stuff. They just offer you one type of food, and they have a schedule and they work out what is due on Monday and what to serve you on Tuesday, and they have this schedule and they stick to it. Yeah. So it's like every day you have the same kind of thing. Yeah. I'm saying a lot of things about a lot of bad things about Chinese.
All right. So as a student, what is the number one like place where everybody kind of just like went to go?
Oh,
eat?
The library. Oh, what?
Oh my gosh! I was thinking the same thing.
Right?
Yeah. It's funny.
Students hang out at the library.
I know. It's like, in the U.S., people go to the library. They're doing a thesis. They're doing something toward the end of their program. They have to do a lot of research for, but that's it. Whereas in China, I went to the art school library. You can't get you can't get a computer. You can't get a space. You're like, whoa! And that means just still stay there all day studying. In the U.S., it's like, okay, Starbucks. There's a Starbucks, cafes, whatever coffee shop or just all area. That's where they'll go. Yeah. But no, not in China. I mean, I would go to cafes there, and there'd not be many people there. I'm like, there'd be a few, but all the international students, we'd go to the cafes or in and around campus. Chinese would all go to the library. Not 100%, but it was quite proportional. To each.
Yeah. Anywhere with Wi-Fi was like, I used to go to this like small little restaurant down the street, and that's where I used to like spend like my dinner / study time. So.
And then, that's the thing I love about cafes is you can get your coffee, you can get a snack, and you can just power through studying and get your stuff done. Yeah. Library is nice too because you have the resources, but you gotta leave in order to get food. And
the only problem with the library is that there's no coffee, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing is, getting coffee, you can't get it as much as here by far. I mean, it's getting more popular among younger people, but you have to go to certain places to get it. Here, it's, you can get anywhere. You can buy coffee there, but...
Yeah, I mean, if you're a college student and you don't drink either coffee or tea, you are... I don't know how the heck you even survive your college experience.
Okay.
No, but the food choice is just totally different. I mean, the structure is similar, but I mean, night and day on the food.
But there must have been some like restaurants outside, like everybody just went there.
And I would say probably the most the most popular place on my campus at Zhejiang University was they called Dodojie. Basically means like food, like they call it. My friends translated it as Corruption Street, and I was like, what? And I had to tell them, you shouldn't translate it this way. And they asked me why. And I told them, and they're like, oh, we'll just call it Garden Street. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. But basically, it's a street where you have lots of street vendors, selling all kinds of food, small restaurants, shops. You can get noodles, fried rice, seafood, all kinds of that kind of stuff, very cheap. And a lot of very special, like Chinese food from Hangzhou or the surrounding areas. And I really like that more. And as I was there longer, I would go there more. Because even though it was either the same price or a little more expensive, it was just, I like the food better there. More variety.
Yes.
Another thing I remember is that I think in the dorms in China, you're not allowed to cook. You cannot do that, right?
Yes, we were not allowed to cook either, but everyone did it. Now, they did have communal kitchens on every floor that you could bring stuff and go there, but 80 people per floor trying to get that free, good luck. So people would just do it in their room secretly, especially a lot of the students whose dietary, venue was more limited because of where they're from.
Right. Yes.
I mean, did they allow any appliances like a hot water?
Oh yeah.
Pot
Oh
kettle?
yeah. Right.
Yeah, you can get like a hot water heater for not for tea and stuff like that. Yeah, that wasn't a problem.
You poured a little bit of that in a ramen cup. There you go, get some food, man.
Yeah, and I was doing my thesis. That's what I did, crunching that thing out. Powering through. Yeah, I just remember first seeing the food over there. It was, quite different. I was quite shocked. I mean, I eventually grew to really like it, but it was like, wow, this is different. Going on from food, another thing is that's important. We kind of touched on this a bit. Is the professors you have.
Yeah, I loved all my... okay, better yet said, I didn't love all of my professors. that would be such a false statement. The professors that I respected the most are the ones that made me actually work the hardest. I had this network and engineer professor who put me through hell. He literally forced us to learn how basically the internet works. And I think, and because now I know how to do my job so much. So it's those type of professors that kind of challenge you on a purpose. They're pretty strict. Do you guys have any good relationships that drove you with your professors?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I had several in the U.S. during undergrad, and I had a couple that I met in China that really helped me. But I would say more in the States, but I had a couple in China that really helped me off and on.
I don't remember my college professors.
Really?
Cannot remember anyone. There's a professor. I think she taught English, because it was in the first and second year when we were all required to learn to take English course. And she was making everyone sleeping in class.
And there are a lot of those classes, but there are even classes that are interesting. But that first morning class, and then it may just be
that was in the morning, 8:30 a.m.
Oh,
yeah.
Is there any teaching pattern that they taught over in China versus here that you liked more or less?
It's kind of hard to say. It really depends on the type of class you're taking, because my master's is in international relations, so we touched on history, politics, economics, security, and some, kind of the four big areas, and theory, of course. But I would say that, as I mentioned a little earlier, I had one professor from the U.S., one from Japan, and then Chinese professors, and each one kind of had their own style. The Japanese professor, the one you had, very regimented and very by the book. Chinese ones similar, more lecture, and then American was much more kind of a mix of lecture, discussion, and kind of follow up. And also, I found that our American professor he was actually much more active in engaging students before and after class, whereas the other professors, they would come in and go. So I find that, and the same with the American professors here, they are much more willing to engage students one on one. Even talk to them on the phone, or get together with a bunch of them out of hours to help them out.
I remember that we were talking to somebody, and they made a comment that kind of struck me a little bit hard. Like, they said that their home, right, their home in home countries, professors, the classes were harder, but they didn't learn as much. Although the classes were easier here, they learned more than they would have at home. Like, do you guys think, like, kind of get that vibe of like foreign being harder? Yes, but like maybe not as applicable, right? More theory, not application.
What do you mean by harder? The class is harder. It's like,
You know, I have heard that, especially from some European students as well, and Chinese students as well, that the classes here are more demanding. You know, they may not be harder in terms of content, but there's much more discussion. It's not just lecture and test, final exam. It's lecture, tests,
final
discussion,
exam.
Projects,
Papers.
Yes. Yeah, and I would say that the American method or is way.
I'm taking this course with a bunch of undergraduate. It's a kind of mixed course. So I have to take the exams. It's like 4 exams altogether for one semester, and also like a final paper for graduate students. And I think it's pretty demanding because every class in every class period. He would introduce a new theory, media theory, or critical theory, and there's a bunch of theories, a lot of theories you have to remember, you have to know, and then you have to give like your own examples. So sometimes in exams he asks us to write examples to explain his theory, and the examples should not be from class. You have to come up with new examples in your mind. So I think that's pretty demanding in this sense because you have to apply this theory to your own life.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point there, Scarlett. I think the American method, they will teach you something, but then they make sure you learn how to use it in your own way.
Yeah.
And I think that, going back to the harder, less hard, I think the classes here are more demanding. There's more you have to do, and there's more critical thinking. It depends, of course, the subject you're learning, but I think that some of the elective courses in China I took were more just lecture, test, paper, that's it. Others were more like the classes here, so you kind of got both. But the classes here, they're also like that, but I think that there's much more emphasis here on really ensuring the student not only knows it, but can use it. And also can doesn't just know the theory or the methodology, but can create their own from it and implement it. And that's one thing I've noticed. A lot of Chinese students I met, they knew the stuff, but they couldn't create it in their own way. Whereas a lot of American students, they may not have learned as much of the information, but they can still implement it very ambidextrously.
Yes, but I'm still having this question because for undergraduate or graduate level, what they can understand about a theory is pretty superficial. I mean, you just understand the general understanding, and you don't really have all this time to dig really deep into the theory. You don't have time to read all the books and the original books by the author. So I think it's okay when you want to try to apply the theory to a real life phenomenon, but sometimes it takes. It's not very possible that you can implement every theory.
For sure.
That's my question.
Sure.
I'm not questioning about the method, but I'm thinking, if you remember all the theory, and it still takes time for you to understand truly.
Yeah, and not every student's going to be able to take away as much, collectively. It's going to be very different based on the student, and it also depends if it's what they like or they don't like. So, yes. But I think that the purpose is that, and I think that's something that
I'm sure they're leading it to
exactly
to a right good direction.
And I think by the end of an undergrad or grad program, that's the goal, is to get a student to be able to have that ability.
Yes.
And whatever they're studying. So, yeah. So that's kind of So I'd say professors. That's kind of summarizes that to the extent of kind of just more on a very basic note. And then of course, you're in college, you have professors, and of course you got to have friends. So I think this is pretty general, but I think it's interesting if we kind of can share the way you make friends and how those friends interact with you and around you.
Oh, did you go to like communities, student communities or associations in China?
Yeah, there were. Yeah. They have those. Just like I'd say, there's really wasn't much difference in both universities from here or in China. They have student organizations, clubs, etc. But maybe what they can and can't do, or how much they do, can vary.
Yeah. Like I was part of one of those organizations, and it was a nice thing to do. Pretty much, all we did was like one event a semester, and then that's usually how we got together. Funny enough, where we made most of our friends was in the computer lab. We were all hacking at our code, and then we were all like, "Hey, did you get this function going?" It's like, no, I got this issue. So like that camaraderie of like trying to solve a critical problem was actually how I got some of my best friends to this day after college. I don't know if you guys kind of got that same experience, like in those like senior projects, or like those like when you're doing those core. That's usually.
I would say that my undergrad in the U.S. and my grad in China, I would say there was much more emphasis on group work in the U.S., whereas China is more independent. We did a few things as groups, but not as much. I mean, a couple of the group projects were very big in my grad, but there were more emphasis on group projects while I was in my undergrad.
I think, from my experience, I think the college life is more like a very perfect time for you to date. But besides that, I don't think I made any real friends from college, because they're more like concentrated on themselves. They just want to do. They don't really that outgoing and want to make friends with you. It's not like that, but it's a perfect place for you to meet people.
No. Yeah, I definitely concur with you. I think that American students from undergrad, they were much more willing to reach out, build relationships, create new things. Of course, anyone can take this with a grain of salt. But at least like the friends I made, people I was with, they were just very interested. Even if they didn't do it, they had the interest in doing it. A lot of the Chinese around me, when I was at my master's, they were just very focused on getting their stuff done. And a lot of it was they didn't have time. They were always busy. Whereas American students, they're busy, but not like Chinese students.
No, in the American system, I mean, we were able to get more friends, and I guess I don't know, the definition of your friends can vary. Like friends to me is just like could be colleagues, right?
Acquaintances,
like they're not over cooking barbecue with me, right? Like it's more like we talk shop and we're done. But I do agree, man. Dating in college was so much easier than in the real world.
Yes,
it's like your social life has just been dead for 5 years, and now you gotta actually like get to know people.
I would definitely say that dating in college is a lot easier, and because you're surrounded by so many people that are around your age, so naturally it's much easier just to meet people. But I would say that even though it's different, I did make one of my best friends in China. You always can find that person who is very similar to you or has some very similar ideas that you can really just connect with, and you can do stuff together. So it may be hard, but you can always find those people regardless.
Yeah, dude.
But I'd also say that I would say that friends here, they're just much more in the U.S. during my undergrad. More just very talkative and this and that. Whereas the friends I made in China, they were much more shy. A lot of times they were, my English is not good enough. I'm like, who cares? My Chinese sucks, so who cares? But I found that as they got to know you more, they really did open up, and they actually were like, wow, I think a lot of times some of my really close Chinese friends, both male and female, eventually after they got to know me, they really came to me and talked to me a lot of personal things, and I was really perplexed, like, why are you asking all this? And they'd be like, well, I don't think you'll judge me as much. And I was like, and at first I'm kind of like, what?
You're from a different culture.
Yeah, and at first I was a little shocked by it, but I got used to it, even though it was still kind of weird. But I just couldn't get over it that they want to come to me over some of their friends they'd known a lot longer. But and I'm not saying this is always the case, but
Yeah.
I would say that for some of them, that was quite interesting.
It's just you, Sean, man. You got that face that you
No,
we can
no.
bear our darkest secret to you.
No. I just think the main thing is if you can demonstrate to someone, I'm not going to judge you for what you do, who you are, and what you like. I'm just going to be neutral. I think that's really important.
Yeah. I also think for Chinese friends, I have a group of friends from high school. They were like my best friends, and we don't really share very intimate stuff. Sometimes you want to build up the best image in your group, in your community. So that's why they prefer to share something with an outsider, but not with a group of friends, because they want to have like their best image. That's what you see on WeChat moments. They only post beautiful pictures there.
And I'm sure you know this. I think in many of them because of this, because they want.
You're not the one to judge them, and you will never tell, and no one cares about your opinion. So yeah.
And I think one big concept that I got to know of is responsible for this. Mianzi,
right.
Face.
Right.
That's something that in the U.S. you have this, but in China it's so much more. And it was quite surprising, and but yeah, I think that
especially with your close connections and close people, you always want to have 面子. You always want to have like the best image.
Yeah, and I think with me and my good American friends, it's like that doesn't apply to us. We don't really care. If it's like.
But do you share stuff with your friends?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like I think. I think it depends on how far you go with that, of course.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think most Americans who are really good friends, they're very comfortable sharing a lot of intimate details. Maybe not too much, but a lot of basic and maybe even more in-depth things. But and compared to a lot of Chinese friends, as you're saying, I definitely agree with you on that. That they're much more worried about how they look versus what they actually know.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like it might be the reverse, like because like yes, we do have the tiers, right? Of acquaintance, friends, best friends type of thing, but we actually, as higher you go in the tier, like my best friends, like they know way too much about my life.
Yeah, right.
So and it's good and it's bad. So, but I got the Mensa when it's like work acquaintances or just friends that I'm just trying to like get to know better.
Yeah, I think it's in the U.S. it's more at work professionally. You definitely have Mensa. Yeah. Your personal life, friends, it's there, but it's much more lax, or it can vary. Whereas in China, I think it's almost everywhere.
It's like a mixture of your professional life and your personal life in China, because a lot of professional, your foundation is basically based on your personal life. It's like you get 关系, you get relations with people, and then all this 关系relation will help you to go to a higher level in your job.
That's one thing I've learned over there is just 关系 relations are so important. And they're important here, but it's not like it's really hard to describe. It's just the intensity of it is much
a lot
more.
Of human connections is from your schools, from college, from high school. So 面子 is always important.
Your
image is always very important.
Yeah. So, and I think that's one thing that a lot of Chinese, when they come here, they're really shocked by is that, no, we don't care about that, or who cares? And you're like, what? Some of my friends, they've come here to visit, and my one friend came here, and he spent 2 weeks here, and he was blown away by a lot of things. He really enjoyed it, but he really said, wow, I just feel more relaxed.
Yeah. Right.
Which, take it for what it is, but that was interesting to see kind of, of course, we could go into this so much more, but we'd be here forever.
Yeah, that's a whole chapter right there.
Yeah. And I would say kind of the last two things we want to talk about, we can kind of blend, is kind of like the campus environment and outside activities around campus. And, campus is campus wherever you go. It's going to be the same basic thing. But I would say that from my experience, my undergrad university was in a small town. My grad program was in the largest city of Zhejiang Province, Hangzhou. So, huge difference. Yeah. They both were very large campuses, but the undergrad is like, you leave campus to just woodlands and small town, whereas in Hangzhou, campus, big city just next to you.
Yeah, I think that's just well, it's a sad thing, but at the same time, it's kind of whatever. because our campus was big. Like it's actually
second largest in the U.S.
Yeah. So, but
I think.
no, but it was in the top 5. But when you think about it, like, well, once you're out of campus, like, there's not much to do. You gotta drive.
There's no entertainment.
No.
There's no public transport. Yeah, it's like,
I think that's the case with most
campus,
U.S. schools in the U.S. in general.
Off campus, I have to wait and because I have to go ride a bus, so schedule after schedule, and get ready for the bus. So you need to have a car if you live in the United States, right? But if you live in China, in major cities, that would not be a problem.
I completely agree.
You just go out and you get anywhere you want to go.
I will say that nothing beats having a vehicle in terms of how quickly you can do things. But yeah, when I was in Hangzhou, there were buses that went everywhere.
Taxis everywhere.
Yeah,
Subway, buses.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sadly that's just like the Americans
love their cars.
Yeah, like it kind of sucks. I mean, when you get to like cities like New York, actually has a pretty good subway that you can go around.
Chicago too, downtown,
and Seattle even. But like kind of like rural areas like this, especially like this, they don't.
And it's understandable because there's not the population to drive that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're going to come here to study, you don't have a car, you don't have a license, because I could have gotten a license in China. I would just have taken a test, but it was impractical because I couldn't have gotten vehicles. They're so expensive, and I wasn't there long enough to really utilize it effectively. But yeah, if you're coming to the U.S. and you're like, okay, I have to use a bus. Sometimes there are no buses. Yeah. Luckily, in this area, we do have at least one county transit system. Yes. Yeah. But you really need to rely on your friends who live there, who have cars.
Yeah, car is kind of important, at least in this area. But I mean, that kind of changes the experience, right? Like as a student, I think it's your wild years, right? You actually are able to do crazy things with some repercussion, but not that many repercussions.
Yeah. There's a fine line there.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it was just more strict over here. Like when you think about like larger cities, you could just go like bar hopping and stuff more easily.
Yeah, that's the thing is that I've noticed, and I'm sure Charlotte, you can completely agree with me on this, is that in the U.S., a lot of college kids, when they're off, they really can have a good time partying to varying extents. Chinese students, they don't do that nearly as much. They just they wake up, they go to class, they study, they eat, they go to bed, and occasionally they do stuff.
I'm sorry, party is a foreign concept to us.
Okay, so maybe I wasn't being, I didn't give it enough emphasis.
Now they love parties. I think they just because they're influenced by this Western culture. But party is not like what you think in China. Is when we think about party, I think most people will think about a reunion with friends or with family members, or it's not like having beers and dancing around. But they do that a lot in China nowadays because of this Western influence. But yeah,
yeah, I would say my one buddy from China who I met, I brought him here to visit, and I took him to some of my friends were still in undergrads at the time. I took him to a college party, and I think it changed his life. Not in a bad way, but he was really shocked. He came there scared, terrified, and he left really happy. Not happy he's like drunk or anything, but he really had a good time. Initially he was like, "Oh my god, what's going on?" Fast forward a couple hours, this is a lot of fun because the people are so nice. You can talk about anything. We're having a good time, and I'm just like, well, okay.
But one thing is that students in college in the United States are not allowed to drink, right?
Well, they can, but not until you're 21.
Yeah.
And many times, maybe the residence halls or certain places, they have limits on what you can and cannot do. And also, you can't have people who are of drinking age and not drinking age in a party together. That could be a huge problem.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this rule is broken all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost impossible to enforce. But
it's impossible.
Yeah, it is impossible to enforce. I mean, people get caught all the time, but you can't catch them all, and it's just it's almost part of the culture,
Yeah.
The college culture here.
Yeah. I mean, campuses come up with crazy things like, basically, ours is technically a no alcohol zone.
That's completely untrue for every campus in the United States.
I mean,
I know. No, that's the memo. But
the memo is
there's what's stated and there's what's reality.
And even when you get caught, like I think most of the times it's just like a slap on the wrist type of thing, and then they force you. I had a buddy who brought in a case of beer, and they actually forced him to open every can and pour it in front of the cops. So like.
Yeah, I think a lot of times cops, especially if you're not drunk, if you're there underage but you're not drinking, they're just like, yeah, hey, you could have gotten a lot of trouble, get out of here. But or it's more of a lesson.
Yeah.
If you're not like drunk driving, if you're just there and you're not causing any problems, they just catch you. It's more like, we're gonna scare you, don't do it again. But then again, it really depends on the cops and where you're at.
So maybe it's not as maybe it might be a little bit different.
I don't think it's even really an issue in China. I never even encountered any of this.
That's not an issue in China.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, because almost all the parties I went with were.
I don't know if there's an age. Is there age?
That's a good question because I never have actually seen like a written age of drinking in China. I mean, really? I imagine maybe it's around 18.
I think they have.
But yeah, I've never actually seen a specific age because you go to any bar here, you can say no one under 18. No one born after this year can drink.
Yeah, I think the age is 18.
Like Europe.
It's more like like 18.
Makes sense. Yeah. So that's I guess life in college, both in US and in China. Thank you for listening to another episode of International Immersion. As again, we end our tradition by saying goodbye in the languages that everybody speaks. So I'll start it off. Goodbye.
再见.
再见.
Adios. See you next time.